another day to talk about something important on TV47 Breakfast. Remember, we're going to be bringing you this conversation online live. We're streaming on Facebook at TV47KE and on Twitter as well. So you can join the conversation on reproductive health and also have your input. And we're going to read all your input and response on air. Now, this morning, as we had promised, we're going to be asking the question, who has the final say when it comes to matters reproductive health, especially a woman's reproductive health? Is it the government or is it the woman herself? The other day, on 10th of February this year, the Nairobi women representative, Esther Passari, mentioned that women should be given the ability or the capacity to actually choose if they want to have a conception and carry it to the end, or actually make a different decision with it. But then again, is the question entirely a moral question on whether a woman should keep a pregnancy to term or actually decide to do otherwise with it? Other people have said so many times that the question of right to life is actually similar to the question of final sentencing or capital sentencing, where somebody decides if somebody is going to die because he's a criminal or not. But are they really the same thing? So this morning, the question that we're presenting to you is, who decides if a woman should actually keep her baby or not? Who makes the final choices when it comes to a woman's reproductive health? Should it be the government and the policies created by the government, or the woman herself? Join the conversation and you can actually call in live. I have Dr. Brenda Obondo, karibu sana. And I also have Wakili Presi Akinyi Sandra. I'm telling you the names. Good morning, ladies, and welcome. I know that this is a difficult conversation, but again, the beauty of this day and time is we actually set the agenda and we create the agenda for ourselves as women. So let us begin from the very top. When we're talking about reproductive health, it is a very large topic. So because I know this is your area, what does it entail entirely as a whole topic before we narrow it down to the question of choice?
Reproductive health encompasses the health of a woman in terms of her reproductive system. So it has to be the whole health. And health is basically not just you not having disease, but it also it's your mental well-being, it's your physical well-being, your social well-being. So that's basically health. So health is the whole person, and not necessarily just the absence of disease. So anything related to the reproductive system and touches on your mental well-being, your physical well-being, your social well-being, then that's reproductive health.
So the moment we're talking about choice, before we begin looking at it as a moral issue, is it all right to begin looking at it as a health issue?
Yes, it is. It is a health issue because choosing whether to carry a pregnancy to term it impacts on your mental well-being, it impacts on your social well-being, it impacts on your physical well-being.
All right. So, Presi, we've had the government come in and we have laws surrounding choice as a whole. And because now this is your practice, what are some of the laws that have been born out of the policies created by the government when it comes to reproductive health and the matter of choice?
So first of all, we agree that reproductive health is such a silent issue, and that's why the legal framework has come together as a whole, basically, to emphatically push for the agenda. And this is seen in Article 43 of the Constitution, sub-Article 1, which talks about that every person has a right to the highest standard of reproductive health, including the right to health services and basically the right to acquire the reproductive health care. And then we also have the proposed reproductive health care bill, whose objectives are in threefold. Number one, basically to provide a framework to enhance the protection and the advancement of the reproductive health care as a whole. Number two, to basically enable an environment where there can be reduction in maternal morbidity, in child morbidity, in child mortality, and lastly, to access equality and to access quality and comprehensive healthcare services. Yes.
All right. So clearly, Brenda, the law is inclined towards offering protection and providing good health. But then again, we have, and let me first of all throw this to Presi before we actually look at it. The issue of choice, the matter of choice, it has conditions attached to it legally. What are these conditions? How do they look like?
So this is found in Article 26 of the Constitution, sub-Article 4, where we talk about, of course, the right to life under the previous articles, but Article 4 specifically enunciates that abortion in Kenya is prohibitive. It's not permitted, but only under two specific exceptions. Therefore, we have an exception to the rule where the life or the health of the mother is at stake or it's in danger. And lastly, only if the doctor gives permission or if the health professional gives permission. Yes.
All right. Doc, it looks like the government and the law is inclined towards giving or enhancing good health. Giving good environment or ensuring that every woman and every child has good health. But then again, when it is conditioned as it is, and yet we have somehow seen that there is a connection between good health and the fact that a woman needs to make a choice. It looks quite scattered as it is.
Yes.
Because then if you're making decisions concerning good health, and then there are other conditions that are limiting choice, and believing that, again, when you are limiting these choices, you are still in line with providing good health. Is it scattered? Does it make sense? Are they in sync?
What the law states is that it boils down to the judgment of the healthcare giver.
Yeah.
And I think maybe we misinterpret it, or as healthcare givers, we are not also very... because of the stigma previously, we are not very conversant with the law as it is. Because when we say that if a woman's life is in danger or her health, and as we just said, health is the well-being, so mental, physical, social. So if you feel it will affect this woman socially, and it's a danger to her social well-being, or it's a danger to her physical well-being or her mental well-being, then on those grounds, you can actually provide a safe environment for her to have her choice.
To make her choice.
Yeah.
It feels like you have interpreted the law, yes. It feels like you have. We're going to see the lawyer for that, but yes.
Yeah. So we can say it's not direct in the law.
Yes.
But the provision made, I feel, is adequate to protect our women.
Yeah. You have mentioned stigma, and it feels like the interpretation actually comes in line with good health and choice and all that. Does it sound correct in law, the interpretation that she's almost done?
Surely. She has a very good background in law. So what I know that the law is providing through these provisions, it's saying basically that abortion is not allowed in Kenya, that it's quite illegal, it's prohibitive, but only in some very few specific circumstances when the health of this mother or the health of this giver is at stake, or when this health professional practitioner has the mandate, or it's incumbent upon this health professional to basically give the opinion when matters emergency emerge. So that's when we can say, okay, we may actually procure abortion just in those two.
What's your opinion
areas.
about that act?
Honestly, I find it very, very hard to enunciate this because I'm definitely a pro-choice advocate. I feel as if women's rights are very salient. I don't feel as if they should be left in the hands of the law to dictate this. But again, maybe they should, but just with perhaps a very small tinge of monitoring laws and maybe supervisory laws. So I feel as if I feel as if perhaps the laws backing abortion in the country are stringent and restrictive. But then, funnily enough, this does not stop women from aborting. Funnily enough.
Because then we are going to ask ourselves which one is the better evil, the deaths that are coming from illegal abortions or the other way. But then now let us look at the moral question, because when we mention stigma, and I know you as a viewers at home, you'd like to get your input forward on this. When you talk about stigma, when you talk about laws, when you talk about all these things that are creating boundaries, then you talk about the question of morality. That has been the basis and the foundation. So which one is it? Should this be entirely a moral question, or is it more complex than morality? And for the viewers who enjoy Swahili, I know it's our language, you know. Wakati ambao tunazungumza kuhusu kulea mimba na kulea mtoto, je, ni swala ambalo linafaa kuhusu tu maadili ama ni swala ambalo linaenda ndani zaidi ya maadili? Remember, you can give us a call. The number is down there, and also you can talk to us on our SMS line 2207 or also on Facebook and Twitter at TV47KE. Doc, is it entirely a moral question, or is it more complex? Because we know that other countries, the US, Britain, everywhere, they're struggling with this, and they're founding every decision mostly on morality, especially Catholicism, that determines whether it's a yes or a no.
So the morality issue, it's actually not, it's very, what do I say? It's hard to state. And it's very confusing. It's giving, because you find that the law of the land most of the time, and I don't know if you can agree, is based on religion. So you find if there's a certain culture in a country or in a population, or there's a certain religion that's followed, you find that the law of the land is based on that most of the time.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
that's a fact, yes.
It's hard to detach the law from religion, and we know religion is what governs our morality, and that's what makes us decide this is right and this is wrong.
Yes.
Yeah.
So then, should we leave it at this? Because we know that the law has to be here, that culture has to be here, that religion has to be. I mean, it's part and parcel of our existence as humanity. So where do we draw the line when it comes to matters like this, that are now gagged, or where now the law seems to be gagging the reality?
I feel like as a society, probably we should be more open to, because we live in a dynamic society. Everything is changing every day. So we need to begin to be more open to this independence in choice. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. What do you think, Pressy? Where the law comes in, morality is a question here. The issue of abortion, keeping or not keeping a child, is it more complex than morality?
Okay. So first of all, in law we call this the natural law philosophy, where morality cannot be detached from the law. They're hand in hand. And you can see that from the earlier days, the philosophers also got to prove this, the likes of Aquinas and whatnot. And this also was propagated in the course of the years to now, when we cannot entirely detach morality from the law. We can see so many laws, of course, in the Constitution, which are tied to morality. You find that a tinge of morality kind of predisposes these laws. So to say that we can very congently attach these two things is so hard. It's not like duck to water. It's not easy. It's very, very hectic, because this has been there for the longest time. And also, if you look at the African context, our legal framework is based on, of course, the socio-economic factors, but also the religious factors, which we are not so causing up to detach from. So it will be very hard. But my take is, I feel as if the world is evolving, laws are evolving, and therefore we should be open enough to this type of evolution. We should be open enough to the window of change, especially when it affects the rights of women. Because at the end of the day, we cannot just sit down here and decide to very mandatorily state that women are not supposed to do this, women are not supposed to do that, or these laws will be put in place because of this and that, yet we do not really know the background that covers these women at the end of the day.
All right, and that leads us now to the next question as well. We cannot detach ourselves entirely, but then it seems like then we need to relook what is more realistic in this day and age. But then the question again to the viewer at home, remember the hashtag is TV47 Breakfast. Who really decides whether a woman gets to keep her pregnancy and bring up her child? Should it be the government or should it be the woman? When you're talking about this as the law and maybe looking at it from a different perspective in this moment, we do not have, and this is a fact, the correct statistics of how many girls or how many women die out of procuring illegal abortion.
That is true.
We may not really have the accurate number, and this is because it is done behind the curtains and nobody really wants to talk about it. So if there would be a provision for legalizing and making this choice as easy as possible, maybe lifting the stigma out of it. Doc, do you think this would reduce the numbers of illegally procured, deaths that come out of illegally procured abortions?
For
in
sure.
your opinion, yeah.
Definitely. Because these women who go and have clandestine abortions, that is outside a health facility and not by a skilled professional, are likely to have complications. And a lot of the times, not very few, we don't know the numbers. So not all of them get to the health facility post-abortion. So not all of them receive that post-abortion care. So you find that there are very many unreported cases that happen. So we actually don't have the statistics. But what unsafe abortion means is that you're having abortion away from a medical environment and it's not done by a skilled professional. If it's done by a skilled professional, the same to normal births, it actually reduces maternal mortality by a skilled professional in that controlled medical environment. So definitely that would decrease the number of deaths.
All right. Prissy, do you think if we created a space where this conversation can be done without stigma attached to it and without morality actually gagging, that we would reduce the overall number of deaths attached to it?
Okay. So first of all, I read this. The World Health Organization some time back released a survey that half of the women who die annually due to maternal deaths, all of these are caused by unsafe abortions. Then they went ahead and said this comes to 25 million lives which are lost due to unsafe abortions. So it surely is a silent issue. It's very sensitive, and I feel as if it's time we need to step up. We need to perhaps come up with means and modes to curb this so that by the end of the day, we'll not just be saving lives. We'll not just be reducing maternal morbidity or child morbidity or child mortality. We'd also be erasing the stigmatization that has been there for the longest time, that has been inbred. So I feel as if we need to just we need to perhaps shift our thinking to a new sense, which will be very salient and paramount to the life of the mother, even to the life of the child, but basically the life of the mother.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So before we get into the other social interventions attached to it, which again are gagged with a question of right or wrong, because right now we are talking about contraceptives and we're talking about children or adolescents in school being given contraceptives. But again, the morality question walks into the whole thing. But even as we speak about this, creating a space where the choice is available, what do we do to the fact and the reality that this is life, and the moment we're trying to make a decision whether to have it or not, there is the definite fact that there is life being terminated, and we cannot detach as a humanity from that reality and fact. What do we do with that, Dr.
Oh, Corazon, this is such a difficult question. Because it still brings us back to who makes the decision. Which right now is really a gray area. Who makes the decision of whether this child you're carrying should live or not? Is it me as a health worker? Is it our laws? Is it you? So it's really a difficult question. But I feel when we get to the point where we are discussing whether we should keep life or not, and the numbers involved, especially in our country, we need to look at where in our healthcare system, where is the failure in the gap? Because if we are if we are spending this much money on unsafe abortions and the complications related to that, then we need to go back and think our contraception needs being met. Are we educating our children, our daughters, our mothers? Is it out there? Are we as healthcare practitioners open to having this conversation with our patients, with our clients, when they come to us and they say, this is the position I'm in? Because as I said before, there's been a lot of stigma. And arising from that, or coming from that place to a place where we can openly have this conversation, is a platform like this where we're sitting and trying to raise that awareness.
All right. Prissy, what do we do with this? Because I know from a lawyer's perspective it is wrong or right according to what the law says. But at what point do we detach the reality that, hey, before you talk about right and wrong from your seat or from your professional perspective, this is life and this is a humanity that needs to preserve life. Where do we stop?
As you've said, we need to look at this from a very realistic, stark nitty. We need to legislate laws that produce or that procure or that manufacture safe abortion notions under perhaps monitored structures. So that's what I feel we need to do. As much as the law is there, as much as we say, oh, this will happen if this does not happen, as much as we say, oh, abortion is limited to this degree, I also feel as if curbing the number of deaths in the country, that's what we need to be focusing on at the moment by legislating laws that produce perhaps safe abortions. We need to consider this because at the end of the day, honestly, as much as the laws are there to bar these women, they'll still do the same. They'll still procure abortions because they don't want to keep the child. Look at rape situations. You can't force this young girl to keep this child if such a situation comes upon her. It's not because they want to. I think oftentimes they're not. It's because of the circumstances that they're found themselves in. Look at cases of incest. So we can't force these people to keep these kids, to keep these children, to keep these fetus and whatnot if they don't want to, honestly, or if they're found in such hazardous situations.
Okay. So I feel, does that mean that then we're going to narrow down the question of right or wrong to individuals? So that it's not entirely a blanket statement made by the government and created in as a policy that this is right and this wrong. This is wrong. We leave it to an individual.
I think it's actually cohesive. It's not a decision made by one, because there's the person who's carrying the pregnancy, and then there's the healthcare professional who this person goes and meets. Then there's the law of the land, but.
So which one has the weight? Which one? Because you have the person who is coming.
As far as the law is concerned, and as far as Pressy has stated, because she's outlined that there are those four special circumstances where an abortion is legal, where it's the health of the mother,
the health of the child.
The health of the mother, her life. Then there's the sexual violence, when there's sexual violence survivors, and also the emergency cases. So the person to determine these four is the healthcare professional.
The healthcare professional, all right. And we already said that the health actually expands, all right. As the health matter now is extensive, we'll talk about psychological, emotional, and all these health conditions put together. All right, as we wind up, we then have the social interventions that are put in place. One of the main reasons in the beginning when CBC was coming into place, one of the main reasons why the number of years in primary school was actually reduced is because children are maturing faster in this era than in the previous era. And that simply means that therefore we have children or girls and boys both engaging into sexual events at an early age. Then now we have the question of, do we give them contraceptives or not? Because that is one of the main social interventions that can actually prevent such instances. But then again, we have churches up in arms. We have moral activists up in arms. What do we do with this? What do we do with these contraceptives and the morality issue?
On that, I feel that especially for these school-going children, we as a society need to really look at ourselves individually and even as parents, how do we raise our children? What are we telling them? Are we having this conversation with them? Are we talking about sex? Are we teaching them about their bodies in school? I feel that in that age group, we shouldn't be worrying about providing contraception. It should be more of how do I take care of my body? Teaching them, and just teaching them from an early age that this is right, this is wrong, this is how your body grows, this is how you will develop, this is how you will feel, this is when you'll be mature enough for this to happen. So these are conversations we need to openly have with our children in schools and at home as parents, instead of shying away and letting culture, like some of our parents, you won't have this conversation with them. Maybe you learn it from the wrong places, from your peers, and they'll tell you, oh, this happened, you can try. And that's how we find ourselves in this situation. Even we've had reported in the recent past, there's an increase of teenage pregnancies in girls in our country, which is sad. Because for me there's a gap in communication.
So basically, according to you, before we run into the shortcut of providing for contraceptives, have we had the conversation? Have we done our part as parents? Prissy, what do you think? Contraceptives for children?
I couldn't agree less. That's exactly what I wanted to say. There's a lot of gain in creating awareness, and it narrows down to our family, the household. As she said, are you having conversations with your kids? Are you talking to them? In school, what is the atmosphere that preps up for this kind of conversation? Because from what I've known, our African society tends to frown upon such conversations. We shy away from them. Yet these things are happening. Yet these kids, the very same kids who you're trying to perhaps protect from all these conversations and all these sorts of information, are the ones who at the end of the day are going to fall in that ditch. And so what will you do from there? So as she said, as she's put it, let the conversation start from the household, from the school, and then from there, the media also has a role. It's incumbent upon the media to educate the students, to educate these kids, to make them know about contraceptions. Because it is true, it's very true that most of the children nowadays are apparently sexually active and they come out. And so what do? You cannot just put a lid on it and close it completely. We'll be lying to ourselves. We'll be hypocritical.
We have to tell them how exactly people get pregnant and the consequences of early pregnancy and all that. Be as vivid about it as possible. All right, but then we have now mature women, and another conversation is that people who are actually in marriages actually also procure abortion, and this is attached to the question of, can I be able to afford to bring up another child or not? So it goes into the issue of money and not actually morality. We have people actually in church and they're still not able to take care of children, so they end up doing this. How do we then bring in other social interventions like cost of life, contraceptives, all these things to work out for the woman? How do we put it together?
So you're right. I saw somewhere that there's an increase in women procuring abortions within marriage. So I think there's this misconception that coitus or intercourse is for procreation, especially in African culture. So it's not just for procreation, it's also for enjoyment. And not everyone who has sex wants to have a child. So culturally, we have those limitations, because you find when women actually, even in the rural areas or where even educated people, when you go and you get contraception, you find many men in our African culture won't want that, and they'll be asking you, who are you cheating on me with? So there's that cultural aspect that really deters us as a society. But also as our system and our healthcare system, we failed miserably, I feel, in terms of providing contraception. Because there are many women who have that need for contraception, but it's unmet. So once we breach that gap, I know these numbers will surely come down.
All right.
Okay. So, of course, I'll go back and lean towards the law side. I think it's incumbent upon the parliamentarians to still legislate laws that touch on abortions, safe abortions in the country, we need to consider other circumstances, not just being stringent, not just being hell-bent on the norm in the society. We need to do that. Number two, we also, I came to realize that we don't have a single abortion act in our laws. And that's something we need to perhaps look at, especially now that the reproductive health care bill has not been enacted. Maybe that should be factored in before it's enacted. Maybe that should be looked at. We need to consider all the circumstances, all the situations that we've talked about. Again, access to law in the marginalized areas is also quite hectic for these women, and that's true. Most women don't even know the provisions of the Constitution regarding abortion. Some don't even know it's illegal. Some don't know the exceptions. Some people just do it because they found themselves in that situation, and therefore that's what they can do.
Yeah, that's a decision. That's the only decision they have. All right, as we find out, you have a minute, and you also have a minute to actually give your final contribution on this.
What I'd like to say, this is an appeal to my fellow healthcare workers and providers. Let's be more welcoming and open, because there are cases where these girls, especially little girls who come and they're pregnant and they want that care, because it's really unethical for you to send them back. Despite your moral standing as an individual, despite your beliefs, let's be at work. Let's open up and have this conversation with them. Let's tell them about the options, because a lot of the time they don't know the options. A girl would come to you, she doesn't know she can have the pregnancy and she can be connected to adoption services. She doesn't know that. So let's sit down and have this let them make an informed decision, because part of our job is communication and education. So let's give this information to them so that they make an informed decision.
All right. I know the surprise this morning is that doctors actually have a responsibility to communicate. I mean, we cannot even read what you write. Yes, Christy.
I like what you said, of course, setting the foundation of the conversation, which is calling up to these types of conversations, creating that atmosphere where people can talk about it, and especially changing the psychology or the notion of the health providers. So my appeal goes not only to them but also to the legislators. Let's legislate laws which perhaps could pass safe abortions, or basically let us have people investigate this, come up with laws that also consider what you've talked about, women under very special extenuating circumstances. Let's do that. Yeah, I think from there things should sweep to victory, basically.
All right, thank you very much, Asanteni Sana. I have actually realized that it cannot be one person making this decision, because it's more complex than morals and laws. It goes deeper. Thank you very much, Wakili Pressy. Thank you very much, Dr. Brenda. The conversation goes on. Okay, Nafali Online, we're still talking about this, because I know you have very many questions about it. Like, what we have decided this morning, according to the doctor and the lawyer, is that it looks like a more complex decision than morals. Maadili yapo, yes. The laws are there, yes. But then what about you? What about the individual that has to live with the decision afterwards? Kumbuka kwamba tunaendelea na majadiliano haya kule online, kwenye Twitter at TV47KE na kwenye Facebook as well. Don't go too far. This is the TV47 Breakfast. Remember, we actually told you and promised you're going to bring a magic here in the studio, an artist who can actually bring to life something that looks exactly like what is happening or standing next to him in less than 10 minutes. And then we also have what's happening in the nation from the eye of the papers. Do not go too far.